If you dare touch her one more time, I swear I will pull your whole empire down. You think anyone will believe a janitor like you? Those words cut through the jazz music, the fake laughter, and the popping champagne bubbles. The sentence made every mask in that room crack, little by little. That night was a charity gala at the Indigo House, one of the most luxurious venues in Dallas, where Texas high society draped themselves in glamour to raise funds for underprivileged children. But the truth, it was just a stage for the powerful to flaunt their wealth. In a corner of the room, Logan Price, 32, stood beside his cleaning cart. For 3 years he had worked the night shift, mopping floors, emptying trash, dealing with what people threw away, even the things they did not want to see. And yes, they never saw him. To them, Logan was just a shadow in a Navy uniform, invisible, unimportant, easily forgotten. But that night, everything was different, completely different. Preston Hawthorne, CEO of Hawthorne Systems, the head of a software empire worth $2.3 billion, was radiant beneath the crystal chandeliers. Beside him stood Grace, his wife, a woman carrying a tiny life inside her. A glass tipped over. A cold laugh. Then a slap. The sound rang crisp, sharp, merciless. Grace fell to the floor in silence. No one in the room dared move. All those refined people, the ones draped in luxury, power, and hypocrisy, looked away. Silence. Afraid of losing contracts, losing status, losing their place in their world. All of them. Except Logan. He didn't want to be a hero. He wasn't even sure he had the courage to speak. But he did. "Sir." "Please stop. She's pregnant." Preston spun around, his eyes flashing with rage. "What did you just say?" "I said stop. You're hurting her." Preston sneered, cold, contemptuous. "Who do you think you are, ordering me around?" There was no answer. But Logan did not back down. He did not know that that moment, a single small sentence in a room full of power, would ignite a fight, not just for Grace, but for everyone who had been forced into silence. Every soul buried in fear. Every voice silenced by 2 simple words. Shut up. This is not just a scandal. This is a story about courage, honor, and the fire that lives in the human heart. You are watching True Tale Time, where untold stories are told in truth. If you believe justice still exists, hit subscribe so you don't miss the most moving stories of bravery and humanity. And before we continue, if you were Logan, standing in that room full of silent people, would you dare to speak up? Before that night, Logan Price never imagined he would become known. He only wanted to get through each day. At 5 in the morning, as always, Logan woke up in his small 1-bedroom apartment in Oak Cliff, a neighborhood few chose to live in. But for him, it was all he could afford. He turned on his phone, reset the alarm for his son, Caleb, 7 years old. The boy was still fast asleep on the top bunk, clutching a worn-out teddy bear with one ear missing its fur. Logan made breakfast. Not pancakes or bacon like on TV, just cereal with milk, sometimes a slice of toast. Then he gently woke Caleb, helped him get dressed, combed his hair, and strapped on his backpack. "Dad, can we have pizza today?" "Next week, I promise." Caleb didn't complain. He was used to next week promises. Used to his father's tired face. Used to his mother's absence. Sarah, Caleb's mother, had left 3 years ago, chasing an easier life. Since that day, Logan's world collapsed. He lost his wife, his job as an electrical technician, after too many absences caring for his son, and the house they had been halfway through paying off. All that remained was him and Caleb, and a mountain of bills. Logan knocked on every door looking for work, but no one wanted to hire a single father without a college degree who needed flexible hours for school drop-offs. Eventually, he landed a janitorial job at the Indigo House, night shifts from 9 p.m. to 5 a.m. The pay was small, but enough to cover rent and Caleb's meals. Each night, he dropped Caleb off with Mrs. Regina, the elderly Mexican neighbor downstairs. She never took money. She only said, "I like having the sound of a child in the house. Go work, mijo. Don't worry." Logan was grateful to the point of speechlessness, but he never said much, only nodded, thanked her, and drove his 15-year-old pickup through Dallas's quiet streets. At the Indigo House, Logan learned how to become invisible. He learned to mop floors without making a sound, to empty trash bins so quietly that no one realized he had passed by, to lower his gaze when guests walked in, and to never look anyone in the eyes. He had seen everything: drunken men shouting at waitstaff, women in designer dresses whispering gossip about colleagues, threats, inappropriate touches, hollow laughter. And Logan? He acted like he saw nothing, because he needed this job, because Caleb needed food, school, a home, because no one cared about a janitor's feelings. But that night, the night Grace Hawthorne fell to the floor, one hand clutching her pregnant belly, blood at her lips, something inside Logan broke. He thought of Sarah, of the months she carried Caleb, her belly huge, her steps heavy, but her eyes glowing with joy. He remembered how he used to help her up the stairs, how he'd rest his hand on her stomach each night, whispering small promises. No one should ever hit a pregnant woman. No one, no matter how rich. And Logan stepped out of the shadows. He didn't feel brave. He was trembling, terrified. Logan wasn't a hero. He was just a father. But that night, he chose to do what he wanted his son to learn. Caleb was all Logan had left. Each morning when he saw his son wake, he saw Sarah's eyes in those brown ones. Each time Caleb laughed, he heard her laughter echo through the small apartment. The boy knew his father worked hard. Once, at school, Caleb drew a picture: a man with a cleaning cart, and above it the crooked words, "Dad is my hero." Logan pinned that drawing to the fridge. Every night before leaving for work, he looked at it and reminded himself, "I have to keep going. For him." But that night, when he stepped into that room full of silence, Logan wasn't thinking about himself. He was thinking about Caleb. He asked himself, if my son saw me stay silent, what would he learn? Logan Price didn't want his son to learn silence. He wanted him to learn to stand up, even when it cost something. If you were Logan, standing in that room filled with the powerful, would you stay silent or step forward? Because what happened next changed his life forever. That night, the Indigo House glittered like a painting. Crystal chandeliers scattered light across the grand hall, shimmering over tables draped in spotless white linen and vases of deep red roses. Guests wore Tom Ford suits, Versace gowns, Patek Philippe watches gleaming on their wrists. They laughed, clinked glasses, and talked about multi-million-dollar deals as casually as afternoon shopping. In the back hallway near the kitchen, Logan Price stood quietly, waiting for the crowd to thin before beginning his shift. From where he stood, the music and laughter drifted through. A dazzling world he didn't belong to. Cole Bennett, head chef of the Indigo House, stepped out, wiping sweat from his forehead. "Logan, tonight's gonna be a long one. They just added 50 more guests. Brace yourself." Logan nodded. "It's fine. I'm ready." Cole looked at him, recognizing the exhaustion behind those words. The two had known each other for 2 years. They'd started working there around the same time. Cole often slipped Logan some leftovers to take home for Caleb. They didn't talk much, but there was a quiet respect between two men carrying the same weight. "Head home early if you can," Cole said softly. "Your boy's probably waiting." Logan smiled in gratitude. "Yeah, thanks, man." But that night, Logan wouldn't make it home early. 9:30 p.m. The party was at its peak. Preston Hawthorne, 6'1", slicked back hair, Tom Ford suit, stood at the center of the ballroom. He was the star of the night, keynote speaker, top donor, the pride of Dallas. His company, Hawthorne Systems, had just secured an $800 million contract with the state of Texas. The Dallas Morning News called him the next-generation tech genius. Forbes listed him among 40 under 40. Beside Preston stood Grace, 28, 6 months pregnant. She wore a pale turquoise silk gown that gracefully concealed her belly. Her golden hair shimmered. Her smile was gentle. But if you looked closely, her blue eyes didn't smile with her. Before she became Grace Hawthorne, she was Grace Montgomery, daughter of an old Charleston aristocratic family. She'd met Preston at a tech conference in 2021. He was charming, brilliant, ambitious. They married after just 8 months of dating. But after the wedding, everything changed. Preston grew harsh, controlling. He decided what she wore, who she met, what she said. Each time she resisted, he shouted. Then came the slaps, the shoves, the bruises she covered with thick layers of foundation. Now, carrying their first child, Grace had hoped things would be different. That fatherhood might soften him, but it hadn't. 9:47 p.m. A small accident. Champagne spilled on Preston's suit. Someone brushed past Grace, but Preston didn't care. He spun around, face red with fury. "What did you just do?" I'm sorry. Someone bumped into me." "You embarrassed me in front of the board." His voice was cold, colder than shouting, more dangerous. "This suit costs $20,000. That bottle, $2,000. Do you even understand what you've done?" Grace trembled. She looked around, hoping someone might intervene, but everyone turned away. The music played on. The laughter remained fake. Every gaze avoided hers. Preston gripped her wrist. "Kneel! You're hurting me." I said, "Kneel!" Then he shoved her. The push was so strong Grace stumbled backward and fell onto the marble floor. The sound of her fall echoed through the room. The music continued, but no one moved. No one. From the far corner, Logan looked up. He saw Grace, pale, clutching her belly, blood at her lips. He saw Preston, towering above her, cold, unremorseful. He saw the crowd, hundreds of people watching, pretending not to. Logan's mind spun. He thought of Sarah, of Caleb, of the crooked drawing on the fridge. "Dad is my hero." He dropped the mop and stepped into the center of the ballroom. "Sir, please stop." His voice trembled, but it was clear. "She's pregnant. Please, don't do this." Preston turned, eyes like twin bullets. "Who the hell are you?" I work here, sir, but she's hurt. Please, let me call a doctor." Preston stepped closer, close enough for Logan to smell the expensive cologne. "You think you're doing something right now?" "I just want to help her, sir." "Do you know who I am?" "Yes, sir, but what?" Logan swallowed hard. "But that doesn't give you the right to hit her." The room seemed to stop breathing. Preston laughed. A cruel, chilling laugh. "You think anyone's going to believe a janitor like you? What do you even do here? Serve drinks? No. You take out trash." Preston was wrong. Logan didn't take out trash, but he didn't respond. Because he knew, in that man's eyes, he was nothing. "Maybe no one will believe me, sir," Logan said slowly, "but I still can't just stand here." That's when Preston swung. A slap, sharp, loud, echoing through the hall. Logan staggered but didn't fall. He straightened, a hand to his burning cheek, eyes steady on Preston. No tears, no hatred, only resolve. Preston tilted his head, hissing through his teeth. "You're fired, right now, and I'll make sure you never work in Dallas again." Logan nodded slowly. "Maybe you're right, but at least I'll still be able to look my son in the eye." Then he pulled out his phone. His hand shook, but he hit record. "If no one will believe me, at least they'll be able to see." And for the first time that night, amid the music and held breaths, someone in the crowd exhaled audibly. If you were one of those people standing there, watching it all, what would you have done? Because just a few hours later, when Dallas woke up, no one could have imagined that very video would bring down the entire Hawthorne empire. Cole Bennett saw everything. He stood in the doorway, a chef's knife still in his hand, glistening with a few drops of vegetable water. From where he stood, he could see the entire main hall. He saw Grace fall. He saw Logan step forward. And he saw the slap. Now, he was watching that man, Logan, trembling, phone in hand, standing alone against an empire. Cole was 38, a head chef for 12 years. He had cooked for presidents, Fortune 500 CEOs, and the most famous people in America. He was proud of his craft, but he also knew the unspoken rule in hospitality: never interfere in the guests' affairs. He had seen it all before: powerful men yelling at their wives, threats whispered between clenched teeth, bruises hidden beneath silk gowns, and every time he had stayed silent. Because he had a family. 3 young children. And a wife, Maya, battling stage 3 breast cancer. Her treatment cost more than $8,000 a month. Insurance only covered part of it. Cole couldn't afford to lose his job. He couldn't. But tonight, as he watched Logan, a single father making $15 an hour, step into that glittering room, something inside Cole cracked. He remembered 2 years ago, when Maya was first diagnosed. They sat in the clinic, the doctor saying, "You need to start chemotherapy immediately." Maya cried. Cole held her hand and promised, "Don't worry, I'll take care of everything." And he did. He worked 16 hours a day, picked up weekend shifts, catered private dinners, weddings, corporate galas, just so Maya could keep fighting. But in all that time, had he ever stood up for what was right? Had he ever said no when it mattered? Never. He always chose safety, silence, survival. And Logan? Logan had nothing left to lose. And that made him braver than anyone else in that room. Cole looked at the other kitchen staff huddled in fear, then at the guests, all looking away, then at the knife in his hand, a tool meant to create beauty. But tonight, his hands would serve a different purpose. Cole set the knife down, untied his apron, and stepped out of the kitchen. Enough. Cole's voice wasn't loud, but it carried through the suffocating silence. Preston turned, brows furrowed. "Who are you?" "I'm the head chef here, and I think you should stop, Mr. Hawthorne." "Stop what? This is my family's business." "It stopped being just your family's business when it happened in public. Not when she's bleeding and carrying your child." Cole walked forward, standing beside Logan. 2 men, a chef and a janitor, side by side. They didn't need to say more. The message was clear. Logan wasn't alone anymore. Preston's eyes flashed with fury. "Do you have any idea what I can do to you?" "I do," Cole said calmly. "You can fire me. Make sure I never work again. But you can't make me watch a pregnant woman get beaten." "You dare?" "Yes, I dare." Cole pulled out his phone and turned on the camera. "And now there are two of us recording. Do you want to keep going?" The silence grew heavy as lead. Preston's eyes darted around the room. A few guests began pulling out their phones. The event manager whispered frantically into a headset. Security hesitated, unsure whose orders to follow. For the first time in his life, Preston Hawthorne was losing control. He adjusted his collar, forced a smile. "I think there's been a misunderstanding. Grace, get up. We're going home." But Grace didn't move. She stayed on the floor, clutching her belly, lips trembling. Cole knelt beside her, his voice soft. "You don't have to go with him. We can call an ambulance." Grace looked up, tears streaming down her face. "But he can't hurt you when there are witnesses." It was the first time in 3 years anyone had said to her, "You don't have to be afraid." She nodded. Cole turned to the security staff. "Call 911. Now." Preston stepped forward, voice rising in fury. "All of you, you're fired. I'll make sure no company in Texas hires you again." Logan spoke, his tone eerily calm. "You can take our jobs, sir, but you can't take our conscience." Cole nodded. "I'd rather lose my job than lose my humanity." And then, something no one expected happened. A woman in the crowd, around 50, in a crimson evening gown, stepped forward and began recording. Then another. Then 5 more. Within 2 minutes, more than 20 phones were pointed at Preston. His empire wasn't built on steel. It was built on image. And now, that image was crumbling right before everyone's eyes. Preston looked around, face pale. He turned sharply and stormed toward the exit. But before leaving, he pointed straight at Logan and Cole. "You'll regret this," Cole replied coolly. "Maybe, but not tonight." Paramedics helped Grace onto a stretcher. She was still trembling, still afraid. But before the ambulance doors closed, she looked back at Logan and Cole. "Thank you." 2 simple words, heavy enough to last a lifetime. Logan only nodded. He didn't need to say anything. He knew. This was just the beginning. As the ambulance pulled away, Cole placed a hand on Logan's shoulder. "Go home. Your son's waiting." "What about you?" "I have to clean the kitchen. But I think this is our last shift." The 2 men stood in silence. No more words needed. They both knew what was coming. But neither regretted a thing. At 4:30 a.m., Logan returned home. He opened the door quietly, careful not to make noise. Mrs. Regina was dozing on the couch, Caleb curled up asleep on her lap, clutching his old teddy bear. Logan gently lifted his son, whispering his thanks to Mrs. Regina. She nodded, saying nothing, but her eyes lingered on the bruise on his cheek, full of worry. He laid Caleb on the bed and pulled the blanket over him. In his sleep, the boy murmured, "Daddy, I love you." Logan bent down and kissed his forehead. "I love you too, buddy." He sat beside him, watching him sleep. His cheek still burned, his head still throbbed, but his heart was light. Because for the first time in 3 years, Logan didn't feel invisible anymore. He had stood up, and that was worth more than any job in the world. The next morning, Logan woke up at 8, later than usual. He checked his phone. 47 missed calls, 128 messages. Most were from unknown numbers, a few from former co-workers, and 1 notification from the Indigo House. You are hereby suspended effective immediately. We are conducting an internal investigation into your disruptive behavior during last night's event. Please refrain from contacting clients or the media. Any violation will result in legal action. Logan read the message, then set the phone down. He had expected this, but reading it still hurt. He was suspended. Not Preston under investigation. Him. A text came from Cole. Me too. They said I acted beyond authority. We need to talk. Caleb didn't know anything. Logan didn't want him to worry. He still made breakfast, drove his son to school, smiled, asked about his math test. But as Caleb ran through the school gate, Logan's chest tightened. How would he pay rent next month? How would he buy food? Without work, what would happen to them? He drove to a small cafe in Oak Cliff. Cole was already there, face drawn, eyes red. They took down the video, Cole said flatly. Logan frowned. What? My video. On X. Tried to open it this morning. Files corrupted. What about yours? Logan pulled out his phone. His stomach dropped. The video file was broken, unplayable. He had recorded from 9:47 to 10:02. 15 minutes. Everything. Now, gone. How could they? Cole shook his head. I don't know. But Preston Hawthorne isn't just anyone. He's got lawyers, IT experts, crisis managers. If he wants something erased, it gets erased. Logan slumped into the chair, hands over his head. So, we've got nothing. Not exactly. Cole reached into his pocket and placed a USB drive in Logan's hand. I copied it from the restaurant's security feed before they wiped it. Not crystal clear, but you can see Preston push Grace, slap you, and the crowd just watching. Logan held the USB like it was a diamond. How did you? I know the head of tech. He sent it to me before the deletion order came down. But Logan, if we use this, we could get sued. They'll say we stole company property. And if we don't? Then Grace never gets justice, Preston walks free, and last night becomes just another misunderstanding. Logan stared out the window. Dallas outside kept turning. Luxury cars gliding by. People in suits walking into glass towers. The world of the powerful went on unchanged. And him? He wasn't even sure he could make rent. But he thought of Grace, of her terrified eyes, the way she held her stomach. We use it, he said quietly. Cole nodded. That's what I thought. Logan wasn't good with social media. He had one X account, just to look at pictures of his son. No Facebook, no Instagram, but he knew one thing. He needed a voice. He opened his old laptop, sat before the blurry camera of an 8-year-old machine. No script, no lighting, no filters. Just a tired man, a bruise still bright on his cheek, and a heart that had made up its mind. He hit record. My name is Logan Price. I'm 32 years old. I'm a single father to a 7-year-old boy named Caleb. Last night, I was working at the Indigo House in Dallas. I'm a janitor. My job is to clean floors, take out trash, and be invisible. At least, that's what people expect. He took a breath. But last night, I saw something I couldn't ignore. I saw a man, a billionaire CEO, shove his pregnant wife to the floor. I saw him slap her. I saw blood on her lip, and I saw hundreds of people watch, in silence. Logan paused, swallowing hard. I'm not a hero. I'm just a father. And I thought about my son. I thought, if one day he sees a woman being hurt, I want him to know what to do. I don't want him to learn silence. I want him to learn to stand up. So I did, and I got slapped, threatened, fired. The video I took was erased, but the truth can't be erased. He looked straight into the camera. Preston Hawthorne, CEO of Hawthorne Systems, hit his pregnant wife in front of hundreds of people, and no one stopped him. Until now. I don't have money. I don't have lawyers. But I have the truth. And I won't stay silent. He turned off the camera. His hands still trembled. But he pressed upload. Within an hour, the video hit 50,000 views. In 3 hours, 500,000. By evening, 2 million. The hashtags #TronJusticeForGrace and the Logan Price spread across Twitter. Local headlines followed. Janitor accuses billionaire CEO of abusing pregnant wife. Shocking footage, the only man who spoke up. Who is Logan Price? But with support came darkness. Threat messages. You ruined Mr. Hawthorne's reputation. You're dead. Emails from lawyers. You are committing defamation. We will sue you into bankruptcy. Phone calls. Strange, cold voices. Watch your kid. Logan shut off his phone, heart pounding. He looked toward the bedroom, where Caleb slept peacefully. What have I done? Cole texted. You've seen the news? They're coming after you. Yeah. They hired a PR firm. They're saying you did it for fame, for money. They're digging up your past, Sarah's car accident, your debts. They can't do that. They can, and they are. Logan, you need a lawyer. You know I can't afford one. Then we find someone who'll take this on. Someone not afraid of Preston Hawthorne. But in Dallas, where Preston had friends in nearly every major law firm, who would dare? Across town, a woman replayed Logan's video for the 5th time. Harper Quinn, 29, independent journalist. She had once written for the Dallas Observer, fired after an exposé on corruption. Since then, she'd gone freelance, funding her own investigations, chasing stories others wouldn't touch. And this story? This was the one she'd been waiting for. Harper picked up her phone and dialed the number Logan had left under the video. Hello, Logan Price. This is Harper Quinn. I'm a reporter. I believe you. And I want to help you tell this story the right way. Logan hesitated. How do I know I can trust you? You don't. But you don't have much choice either. Preston's using money to silence everyone. But you know who he can't silence? Who? Grace Hawthorne. Logan went still. She's at Roper St. Francis Hospital. Harper continued. They're trying to keep her quiet. But if we can reach her, if she's willing to speak, they'll never let her. Not unless we act fast, before they move her somewhere else. Logan looked toward the bedroom, where Caleb lay curled under his blanket. He thought about everything he'd lost, and about Grace, the woman he barely knew, but couldn't abandon. What do we do? Harper smiled on the other end of the line. Meet me tomorrow morning. We're going to see her, together, 2:47 a.m. Logan's phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. I'm Grace. Harper has contacted me. I want to meet you. Room 427, 6 a.m. Don't tell anyone. Logan jolted upright in bed, heart pounding. He didn't know if it was a trap, but if it really was Grace. He called Harper. She picked up after a few rings. You got the message, didn't you? How did you get her number? I know someone at the hospital, a nurse who used to be a domestic violence victim. She saw your video and wants to help. But Logan, we only have one shot. Preston hired guards to stand right outside Grace's room. They'll transfer her to a private facility at 9 a.m. So, how do we get in? The nurse will help. But we have to go now. Logan called Mrs. Regina and asked her to watch Caleb a few more hours. She didn't ask much, only said, Be careful, son. I'll pray for you. He drove the old pickup across the city. The skyscrapers were still lit. Dallas doesn't sleep. But inside the worn cab, Logan felt like he was driving into a battle he didn't know he could win. Harper was waiting in the hospital parking lot. She wore a hoodie, hair tied up, a small backpack on her shoulder. "Ready?" Logan nodded, even if he wasn't sure he was. They went in through a side entrance. Linda, a nurse around 40, met them and guided them down a quiet corridor. She spoke softly. "Two guards are in the main lobby. They're allowing family only. But there's a separate passage from the maternity ward. I'll take you." Cold white hallways, the sting of disinfectant in the air. Logan's stomach tightened. He wasn't used to hospitals. It was also where Sarah had left him 3 years ago. Harper sensed the tension, placed a hand on his shoulder, and whispered, "You okay?" "I have to be." Linda knocked 3 light taps. A weak voice came from inside. "Come in." Logan stepped in. For the first time, he saw Grace in daylight. She was gaunt, blonde hair matted, eyes swollen, the bruise on her cheek still stark. But what clenched Logan's heart most was the way she curled in on herself, like a frightened child. Grace braced herself to sit up, one hand still cradling her belly. "You're Logan Price?" Logan swallowed. "Yes, ma'am. I'm Logan." Grace looked at him, tears streaming. You were the only one who stepped in." "I only did what needed to be done, ma'am." "No." She shook her head, voice trembling. "You did what no one else dared to do. For 3 years, no one dared." She cried, not in sobs, but in a steady flow, like 3 years of restraint finally bursting. Harper handed Grace a tissue. "Grace, I'm Harper Quinn, a reporter. Logan and I want to help you, but we need you to tell the whole truth." Grace looked down at her hands, tiny scars, old bruises. "If I speak, he'll kill me." "He can't." Logan knelt, meeting Grace's eyes. "Not with the whole world watching. Not when you're no longer alone." Grace looked at the stranger who had risked everything to protect her. For the first time in 3 years, she felt someone was on her side. "Okay, I'll talk." Grace started from the beginning. She met Preston in spring 2021 at a tech conference in Austin. She was a marketing assistant at a small startup. He was the keynote, magnetic, confident, talking about vision as if the future sat in his hands. They chatted after the event. He asked her to dinner. Then another, and another. Preston was perfect. He opened car doors, sent flowers every morning, whispered tender things about tomorrow. 2 months later, he proposed. Grace's family urged her to wait, but she was spellbound. She believed she'd found the man of her dreams. They married in December 2021, a big Charleston wedding, 300 guests, featured in magazines. But on the Maldives honeymoon, Preston changed. He checked her phone, who she texted, why the dress was short, why she smiled at a male server. At first, Grace told herself, "He's jealous because he loves me." Then came the shouting, the shoves, the first slap. March 2022, they fought because Grace wanted to visit home. Preston said, "You don't need them. You have me." She pushed back, and the slap landed. Sharp, stinging, sudden. Afterward, he knelt, cried, apologized. "I didn't mean to. I love you too much. I'm afraid of losing you." Grace forgave him. She thought it was an accident, but it repeated. This time, there was no apology, only, "You deserved it. You made me angry." Grace tried to call her mother, but Preston had taken her phone, installed tracking apps, read every text, listened to every call. She once tried to run. Preston found her at a hotel and slammed her head against the wall. "Where do you think you're going? You belong to me, forever." From then on, he isolated her. No friends, no job, no leaving the house without him. Grace became a prisoner in her own multi-million-dollar mansion, Then she got pregnant. She thought, maybe now he'll change. Maybe when there's a baby. But Preston got worse. He kicked her belly when dinner was late, shoved her on the stairs when she cried, tightened his hands around her throat when she begged to call a doctor. The gala night was Grace's last attempt to signal for help. She spilled the drink on purpose, hoping someone would notice, someone would see. And Logan did. "You saved my life. And my baby's." Logan shook his head. "You saved yourself. You were brave enough to come here, brave enough to tell your story." Grace managed a weak smile. She opened a drawer and took out a USB drive. "This is everything I have. Footage from the home security cameras, audio recordings, photos of my injuries after each time." Harper took the USB, her hand trembling slightly. "Grace, you know what this means, right?" "I do. But I can't let my child grow up in that house. I can't." Logan stood, voice firm. "We'll protect you. I promise." Grace nodded. "I believe you." As they were about to leave, a shout rang out. "They're here! Room 427! Two large guards rushed up, blocking the door. "You're not authorized to be here. Out, now!" Harper stepped forward, keeping her voice steady. "We're journalists. We have the right—" "You have no rights here. Leave before we call the police." Logan stood beside Harper, knowing brute force wouldn't work. From inside the room, Grace spoke, weak but resolute. "I want them here. This is my decision." One guard stepped in. "Mrs. Hawthorne, Mr. Hawthorne instructed—" "I don't care what he instructed. This is my room. I want them here." The guards hesitated. They weren't trained for this. Linda, the nurse, stepped out, voice firm. "Per hospital policy, the patient decides who may enter her room. If you interfere, I will call hospital security." The guards looked at each other. One pulled out his phone to call Preston, but it was already too late. Harper had finished recording the interview. Logan had the USB, and Grace, at last, had spoken. Harper worked for 18 straight hours. She watched every second of the footage Grace had given her, each clip another shard of hell. Footage from the living room camera, Preston punching Grace in the stomach, shouting, "You embarrassed me!" Footage from the bedroom, Preston choking Grace until she nearly lost consciousness, then walking away as if nothing happened. Footage from the kitchen, Preston shoving Grace so hard her head hit the counter, blood dripping. He didn't call for help, just said coldly, "Clean it up yourself." The audio recordings. Preston, "No one will believe you. Who am I? I'm Preston Hawthorne. And you? You're nothing." Preston, "If you ever leave me, I'll kill you. Then I'll kill the baby." Harper had to stop several times, not because of the editing, but because of the tears. 10 years ago, at 19, she had been a victim too. She had escaped, spoken up, but no one believed her. They called her dramatic, attention-seeking. Now, looking at Grace, Harper saw herself, and she made a silent vow. This time, the world will not look away. Harper created a compilation video, not a dry report, but a story. She opened with Preston's smiling photos on magazine covers, radiant, successful, celebrated. Then cut to the gala night. Logan being slapped, Grace collapsing. Next came the home footage, every punch, every threat, every bruise. Then the interview, Grace's real face, real tears, real pain. Finally, she ended with Logan's words, "I'm not special. I'm just a father. But I believe when we see something wrong, we have to stand up. Not because it's easy, but because it's right." Harper uploaded the video to YouTube, Vimeo, and her personal site. She sent the link to major outlets, CNN, NBC, ABC, BBC. She typed the email, "This is the story you need to tell." Not because it's sensational, but because it matters. Then she hit send and waited. 7 a.m., 10,000 views. 9 a.m., $500,000. 11 a.m., 3 million. The hashtag Justice for Grace climbed to the top of global trends, not just in the US, but in the UK, Canada, Australia, even Vietnam and Japan. Celebrities began sharing it. Oprah. "This is what courage looks like." Michelle Obama. "No woman should suffer in silence." Reese Witherspoon. "Believe women. Protect women." But the backlash came too. Some defended Preston. "Don't judge too soon. We haven't heard his side." Some attacked Grace. "Why didn't she leave earlier? She stayed for the money." And some targeted Logan. "Just chasing fame off someone's misery." Harper replied to every cruel comment with facts. She refused to let trolls bury the truth. Meanwhile, Logan's phone wouldn't stop ringing. Lawyers from New York, California, even London called, offering to represent him for free. A major Manhattan firm, Morrison and Associates, emailed, "We would like to represent you and Mrs. Grace Hawthorne pro bono. We believe in justice." Cole called, his voice full of disbelief and hope. "Logan, you see this? We're winning." But Logan didn't feel like he was winning. He was exhausted. He sat on the floor while Caleb drew beside him. "Dad, why is everyone talking about you on TV?" Logan brushed his son's hair. "I did something, and people are talking about it." "You did a good thing, right?" Logan looked into those innocent eyes. "I hope so, buddy." Caleb smiled and held up his drawing, a man raising his hand, surrounded by light. "This is you, Dad. You're a superhero." Logan hugged his son. Tears fell. For the first time in days, he allowed himself to cry. Meanwhile, at Hawthorne Systems headquarters, everything was collapsing. The board held an emergency meeting. The stock dropped 23% in one day. Investors pulled out. The Texas state contract was suspended. Employees resigned publicly on LinkedIn. "I can't work for a company led by someone like this." Major clients canceled deals. Partners cut ties. Preston sat in his private 200-square-meter office overlooking Dallas. Once his kingdom, now a hollow shell. The phone rang. His lawyer. "Preston, it's bad. The FBI just opened a domestic violence investigation. Dallas PD wants to question you, and Grace has filed for divorce with a restraining order. Handle it, whatever it costs." "It's not about money anymore, Preston. That video can't be erased. The whole world's watching. You need to prepare to be arrested." Preston slammed the phone down. The glass screen shattered. For the first time in his life, he couldn't buy his way out. 2 days later, Dallas police arrived at Hawthorne Systems with an arrest warrant. "Preston Hawthorne, you are under arrest for assault, domestic violence, and making threats to life. You have the right to remain silent." Outside, reporters swarmed. Camera flashes erupted like gunfire. Preston stepped out in handcuffs, face pale. For the first time, the tech king of Dallas was treated like a criminal, and the entire world was watching it live. 3 months later, the trial began. The Charleston County Courthouse was packed to capacity. Reporters from every major outlet filled the aisles, cameras crowding shoulder to shoulder. Outside, 2 opposing crowds had formed. On one side, signs read, "Believe survivors. Justice for Grace." Across from them, a smaller group, mostly former employees and business partners of Preston, held banners, "Innocent until proven guilty." But the numbers spoke for themselves. Hundreds stood with Grace, only a few dozen with Preston. Logan sat in the witness section, wearing the only suit he owned, second-hand, a little loose at the shoulders. Cole sat beside him. Harper was in the press row, notebook open, pen ready. Up front, Grace sat at the plaintiff's table, beside the Morrison and Associates legal team. She wore a simple navy dress, her hair tied neatly. Her belly was heavy, 8.5 months along. Across from her, Preston sat at the defense table, still in his Armani suit, hair trimmed, his face a mask of cold confidence. Beside him was his powerhouse legal team, one of them famous for getting corporate CEOs acquitted. Judge Eleanor Hartfield, 62, entered, known for her stern fairness. The court is now in session. The case of Grace Montgomery Hawthorne versus Preston Hawthorne. Charges include assault, domestic abuse, and threats to life. Grace's attorney, Rebecca Morrison, 45, stood. Her voice rang steady and strong. Ladies and gentlemen of the jury, today we do not stand for Grace Hawthorne alone. We stand for the millions of women silenced by fear every single day. We will show that Preston Hawthorne, praised as a symbol of success, is, in truth, a man of violence and control. And we will prove this not with rhetoric, but with evidence, with testimony, with video, with medical records, and with the courage of those who refuse to stay silent. She gestured toward Logan. Every head turned. Logan bowed slightly, hands tightening in his lap. He wasn't used to hundreds of eyes on him. Preston's attorney, Gerald Finch, 58, renowned for never losing a case, rose to respond. Members of the jury, this is indeed a tragedy, but not for the reasons you've been told. The tragedy here is the distortion of truth. Mr. Hawthorne is a model citizen, a philanthropist, a loving husband. Were there arguments? Yes. Like any marriage? But abuse? Never. The videos you will see, manipulated. The statements, unreliable. We will show that Mrs. Hawthorne is exploiting the law to gain financial advantage in her divorce. The courtroom went silent. Grace trembled slightly but held her posture. Her gaze didn't waver. Logan was called to the stand. After taking the oath, he sat down. Ms. Morrison began, Mr. Price, please tell the court what you witnessed on the night of July 15th. Logan took a breath. I was working at the Indigo House. I saw Mr. Hawthorne shove his wife to the floor. She was pregnant, bleeding. I begged him to stop. He slapped me and said no one would believe a janitor. What did you do next? I took out my phone and recorded. Because I knew without proof, no one would believe me. Mr. Finch shot up. That video was deleted. There's no evidence. Ms. Morrison smiled. But we have the security footage. The screen lit up. The entire courtroom held its breath. The footage showed Preston pushing Grace, slapping Logan, shouting threats. Everything was clear as daylight. A woman on the jury wiped her tears. Preston sat frozen. His face drained of color. Now it was Grace's turn. She trembled as she walked to the stand, but once seated, her eyes locked on Preston. Ms. Morrison spoke softly. Grace, please tell us about your marriage. Grace began. Her voice faltered, sometimes breaking. She told them about the first slap, the kick to her stomach, the stares, the death threats. I stayed because I was scared, not for money, for my life. He said if I ever left, he'd kill me. And I believed him. Mr. Finch interrupted, Mrs. Hawthorne, if you were beaten that often, why didn't you call the police? Grace looked at him, eyes red but unwavering. Because I knew no one would believe me. He's Preston Hawthorne, and I was just his wife. Do you have any proof? Grace nodded. Ms. Morrison presented the USB drive. The screen flickered again. Home footage. Every punch, every shove, every curse. A woman on the jury sobbed. A man turned away, unable to watch. Preston closed his eyes. For the first time, the mask of power cracked. After 5 days of testimony, the jury retired to deliberate. 2 hours later, they returned. Judge Hartfield read the verdict. On the charge of assault, guilty. On the charge of domestic abuse, guilty. On the charge of threats to life, guilty. The courtroom erupted. Supporters of Grace cheered, cried, embraced. Grace bowed her head, tears flowing freely. The judge continued. Preston Hawthorne, this court sentences you to 8 years in federal prison, with no possibility of early release. You are permanently prohibited from contacting Grace Hawthorne or her child. 80% of the marital assets will be granted to Mrs. Hawthorne. The remaining 20% shall be donated to a fund supporting domestic violence survivors. Preston leapt up, shouting, "This is injustice! I'll appeal!" The judge struck her gavel. You have that right, but today, justice has been served. Court is adjourned. Officers moved in, handcuffing Preston. He turned once to look at Grace, not with fury, but with emptiness. Grace stood, one hand on her belly. Tears fell, but fear was gone. For the first time in 3 years, she was free. Outside the courthouse, surrounded by reporters and cheering crowds, Grace walked toward Logan. She said nothing, only wrapped her arms around him. Thank you for giving me my life back. Logan held her, voice thick with emotion. You deserve that life. Cole stood nearby, smiling. Harper raised her camera, capturing the moment. From a distance, Caleb ran up, hugging his father's leg. Dad, did we win? Logan knelt, holding him close. No, son. We won. 1 year can change everything. Logan Price stood before a small brick building in East Dallas, once an abandoned community center. Now, above its front doors, golden letters gleamed in the morning sun. The Lights Foundation. Sunlight poured through windows that had once been boarded up. Inside were neat rows of chairs, a small stage, and the smiling faces of volunteers. Today was the grand opening. After the trial, Grace received 80% of the assets, about $1.4 billion. She could have disappeared, lived quietly, and never looked back. But she didn't. She came to Logan and said, "We need to build something that matters. So no woman has to live through what I did." Cole joined, Harper joined, and slowly a team was born. They founded the Lights Foundation, a nonprofit for domestic violence survivors. Not just a shelter, but a new beginning. Free legal aid, psychological counseling, job training programs, safe temporary housing, childcare services, and most importantly, a place where survivors could reclaim their voices. At the opening, over 300 people gathered. Activists, survivors, reporters, and local officials. On stage, Grace held 3-month-old Emma Grace Price Hawthorne, her blue eyes wide and curious as she gazed at the crowd. Grace took the microphone, her voice trembling yet strong. A year ago, I didn't think I'd still be alive. I thought it was the end, but a man, a stranger, stood up for me. Not because he had something to gain, but because it was right. She looked down toward the front row, where Logan sat, smiling softly. Logan Price taught me that courage isn't the absence of fear. Courage is doing what's right, even when you're afraid. Today, we open this center to honor that courage, so every woman and every child will know you are not alone. Applause thundered through the hall. Logan stood, lifting 8-year-old Caleb onto his shoulders. The boy waved toward Grace and baby Emma. Nearby, Harper raised her camera, capturing every moment. Cole, now the foundation's director, stepped up to the podium. "We didn't just build a building," he said. "We built a community. A place where light will always triumph over darkness." Among the crowd, a young woman, maybe 22, approached Logan. Her voice shook, but her eyes were fierce. "Are you Logan Price?" "Yes, that's me. What is it?" I saw your video, the one where you spoke about standing up. I was in an abusive relationship too. My boyfriend. But after watching that video, I called the police. I left him. And today, I'm free." She broke into tears. Logan said nothing. He simply hugged her. Sometimes, silence is the most powerful answer. A middle-aged man, around 50, walked up to Cole. "You're Chef Cole Bennett, right?" "Yes, sir. I'm a business owner from Houston. I watched the trial, and the way you stood up inspired me. My company wants to sponsor your foundation. $500,000 a year." Cole blinked, stunned. You mean that?" "Absolutely. And we'll encourage other companies to join. What you're doing, it matters." Cole shook his hand, tears welling. For the first time in his life, he realized his work wasn't just about survival. It was about change. At the corner of the stage, Harper interviewed a group of women, all survivors. One spoke, voice trembling yet radiant. "I used to think no one cared, but seeing Logan, Grace, everyone here, I know now that I matter. My life means something." Harper kept filming. Every word, every tear. She knew this wasn't just a story. It was a legacy. That night, when everyone had gone home, Logan sat on the steps outside the center. Caleb sat beside him, clutching his old stuffed bear. "Dad, I'm proud of you." Logan smiled, pulling him close. "I'm proud of you too, Caleb. You're the reason I did all this." "Do you think Mom can see us?" Logan looked up at the Dallas sky, stars flickering above. "I think she's watching. And she's smiling." Caleb rested his head on his father's shoulder. "I love you, Dad." "I love you too, son." They sat there together, under the soft hum of the city, where light and sound blended into one quiet peace. 1 year ago, I was just a single father working night shifts, mopping floors. I was invisible. I didn't matter. But on one fateful night, I chose to see. I chose to speak up. I chose to stand. And that changed everything. Not just for me, but for Grace, for baby Emma, for the thousands of women who now have a safe place to go, and for my son, the little boy who learned that courage doesn't mean being fearless. It means acting despite the fear. This story isn't about me. It isn't even about Preston Hawthorne. It's about all of us, everyone watching this video right now. It's about those moments when you see something wrong and hesitate to speak, about the times you're afraid, of losing your job, of retaliation, of being alone, about when you think, "I'm just one person. What difference can I make?" But here's the truth. One person can change everything. One person can spark a flame, and that flame can light up the world. If this story touched you, don't just watch and move on. Take action. Support your local shelters. Believe survivors. And stand up when you see injustice. And most of all, never doubt that your voice matters. Because it does. You do. I'm Logan Price, and this is True Tale Time, where the smallest voices can become the strongest. If you're still here, you're already part of the change. Don't just scroll past. Be the witness. Be the light. Be the flame. The Lights Foundation has supported more than 12,000 women in its first year. Preston Hawthorne is serving an 8-year prison sentence. Grace Hawthorne now serves as chairwoman of the Lights Foundation and speaks globally on women's rights. Logan Price is the foundation's executive director, still living in Dallas with his son, Caleb. Cole Bennett, now executive chef, continues to fight cancer alongside his wife Maya, who is now in remission. Harper Quinn won the Pulitzer Prize for her investigative series on domestic abuse. If you or someone you know is experiencing domestic violence, call the National Domestic Violence Hotline, 1-800-799-7233. You are not alone. If this story made your heart ache, even just a little, leave a comment and tell me where you're watching from. Click like to help others see this message. And subscribe for more true stories, where justice, kindness, and courage still exist in this world. I'll see you in the next story, where one small act can change an entire life.